The cafeteria on Prosperity's Reach was a place of endless noise, a swirling mix of alien chitters, human chatter, and the clatter of trays. Sunlight filtered through the station's immense viewports, spilled across tables where beings of countless worlds sat, eating their midday meals. Elara, a human girl whose bright red hair seemed to capture every stray ray of light, expertly navigated her way through the bustling crowd, her tray held high. Her usual routine involved finding her friends near the main observation deck, but today something pulled her gaze towards a quieter, more shadowed corner. There, hunched over a plate of what looked suspiciously like green nutrient paste, sat a figure unlike any she'd seen before on the station. It was a boy, small and slender, with skin the color of a faint twilight sky. What truly made him stand out, however, were his ears. They were long, incredibly delicate, and pulsed with a soft, vibrant emerald green, twitching with an almost unsettling sensitivity to the ambient sounds. He was a Viridian, a species that had only recently joined the sprawling galactic community, renowned for their almost magical understanding of life itself. The boy, whose name Elara would later learn was Kale, kept his head down, his unique ears pressing flat against his skull, as if trying to shrink into himself. A group of older, louder kids, a mix of human teenagers and some hulking Grulak, whose rough laughter echoed like distant thunder, were pointing at Kale. Their whispers, though low, carried on the air, punctuated by snickers that scraped against Elara's nerves. Kale flinched with every ripple of their amusement, his small frame tightening, radiating an uncomfortable vulnerability that Elara felt deep in her chest. She remembered her first days on the station, how strange and out of place everything had felt, how easily she could have been Kale. An unfamiliar prickle of unease ran down her spine, not just for Kale, but for the feeling that something about this situation was subtly wrong. A quiet hum beneath the usual chaos. It wasn't just the bullying that bothered her. It was the way Kale seemed to absorb the sounds, the way his ears, like finely tuned instruments, reacted to everything, hinting at a sensitivity that went beyond normal hearing. The air around him seemed to shimmer faintly, a trick of the light. Perhaps, or something else entirely. Without conscious thought, Elara found her feet, turning, veering off her usual path, her gaze fixed on the isolated boy. She felt a compelling urge to do something, anything, to break the invisible wall around him. The laughter from the other table continued, growing bolder now, but Elara ignored it, her focus entirely on Kale. A small, resolute smile began to form on her lips, a silent promise to herself that she would try to make him feel less alone, to maybe even bring a genuine smile to his face, something that seemed utterly impossible in that moment. The green glow of Kale's ears seemed to intensify for a fleeting second, a silent, unreadable response to Elara's approaching presence, a flicker of something unknown in the bustling heart of Prosperity's Reach, the language of shared laughter. Elara's footsteps were light, almost unheard above the cafeteria's din. Yet, as she approached Kale's table, he seemed to sense her presence. His head snapped up, those large, dark eyes like polished obsidian, widening in surprise before a flicker of something akin to fear crossed their depths. The group of laughing teenagers at the nearby table, the ones who had been making Kale's life miserable, had gone quiet, their heads tilted, watching Elara with an almost predatory interest. They likely expected her to join them in their cruel amusement, or perhaps to simply walk away. But Ilara, unfazed by their silent scrutiny, simply slid her tray onto the table opposite Cale. The soft clatter was the loudest sound in their small corner. "Hi," she said, her voice gentle. "Mind if I join you?" Cale's response was a tiny, almost imperceptible nod, his emerald ears slowly unflattening from their defensive posture. He didn't speak, his gaze fixed on his nutrient paste, but the tension in his small frame seemed to ease just a fraction. Ilara didn't press him, sensing his shyness. Instead, she began to talk about her day, about the complexities of zero-G basketball practice, a sport she adored, even if she wasn't always graceful. She described a particularly embarrassing tumble she'd taken, arms and legs flailing like a newborn star squid. As she spoke, she noticed Cale's ears, those sensitive, vibrant green antennae, twitching and swiveling, almost as if they were taking in every syllable, every nuance of her tone. He wasn't just hearing. He was processing, analyzing. She wondered what sense his species truly possessed, what world they experienced with such advanced organs. The thought sent a small shiver down her spine, a hint of the unknown dot as Ilara recounted another clumsy moment from practice. Injecting a self-deprecating humor into her narrative, Cale's lips twitched, and a soft, almost imperceptible, breathy sound escaped him. It wasn't human laughter, not the raucous, open-mouthed sound she was used to, but it was a chuckle, distinct and genuine, a soft melodic hum that resonated in the quiet space between them. It was a sound Ilara found strangely beautiful, a delicate melody in the symphony of the station. The silence from the other table was now absolute, replaced by curious, almost bewildered glances. Ilara caught a fleeting glimpse of one of the Grulac boys, his brow furrowed in confusion, clearly unsure how to react to this unexpected development. She ignored them, her attention drawn to a small, intricately carved wooden bird resting on Cale's tray, nestled beside his uneaten paste. It was exquisite, every feather detailed with impossible precision, its tiny eyes gleaming. "That's beautiful," she said, her voice filled with genuine admiration, reaching out a finger to gently trace its miniature wing. Cale's emerald ears perked up, and for the first time a true, shy smile bloomed on his face, fleeting but brilliant, like a rare flower opening at dawn. It was a moment of pure connection, unburdened by words, a shared understanding that transcended species and social awkwardness. Just as Ilara was about to ask him about the carving, a sudden, jarring thrum vibrated through the floor, a low, ominous moan that seemed to rattle the very bones of the station. It wasn't a normal sound, not the usual rhythmic pulse of the engines or the gentle thrum of the life support. This was deeper, more primal, like a distant, angry beast stirring. Cale's ears, which had been relaxed moments before, suddenly pressed flat against his head again, but this time not in fear. They vibrated rapidly, almost blurring with the speed of their movement, sensing something Ilara couldn't. His dark eyes darted around the cafeteria, no longer shy but wide with an alert, almost frantic energy. He seemed to be listening to the silence between the sounds, to something far below the threshold of human hearing. A cold dread began to coil in Ilara's stomach. The thrum intensified, a low guttural growl from the station's depths. Other people, In the cafeteria began to murmur, their faces showing confusion, then concern. The familiar buzz of conversation died down, replaced by a growing unease. Cale suddenly let out a soft, high-pitched whine, a sound of distress Elara had never heard from him before, and his skin, usually a soft twilight blue, began to subtly shift, taking on a faint, almost imperceptible shimmer of purple. He grabbed Elara's arm, his grip surprisingly strong, his eyes locking onto hers with an urgency that stole her breath. He pointed not to the source of the sound, but towards the main thoroughfare, his small body trembling with an intensity that suggested a deep, unsettling knowledge. The thrum pulsed again, closer this time, and then a piercing, metallic shriek echoed through the station's vents, a sound of rending metal, of something breaking apart. Panic began to ripple, quiet at first, then growing louder as people looked at each other, their eyes wide with dawning fear. Elara looked from Cale's terrified but resolute face to the chaotic reaction of the crowd. He knew something. He sensed something. The air, which had been clear moments ago, now carried a faint, acrid scent, something metallic and sharp, a smell that spoke of danger. The cafeteria, once a symbol of prosperity's reach, now felt like a fragile bubble about to burst. Elara, holding Cale's hand, felt the faint tremors intensify, and knew with a certainty that chilled her to the bone that their shared laughter had just been replaced by the chilling whisper of a coming storm. Here's the next part of the story, A Talent Unveiled. Continuing the narrative with suspense and a focus on Cale's emerging abilities. A talent unveiled, the piercing metallic shriek that had echoed through the station's vents was immediately followed by a blaring, insistent alarm, a harsh digital voice announcing biocontainment breach. Sector Gamma 7, Agricultural Division. All non-essential personnel seek immediate shelter. Repeat, biocontainment breach. The cafeteria, which moments before had been a cacophony of lunch sounds, erupted into pandemonium. Trays clattered to the floor, chairs scraped back, and a wave of panicked shouts washed over them. Humans, their faces pale with fear, scrambled for the nearest exits, pushing and shoving in a desperate rush for safety. The acrid metallic scent Elara had noticed earlier now intensified, carrying a strange, cloying sweetness that made her throat itch. Medical teams, identifiable by their bright orange biohazard suits, sprinted past the cafeteria entrance, their faces grim, clearly overwhelmed by the sudden, critical emergency. Elara felt a surge of cold dread. She knew the agricultural sector was vital, but also highly sensitive, housing alien flora and fauna, some of which could be dangerous if mishandled. Humans, she remembered from her station orientation, were particularly vulnerable to certain airborne pathogens. A cough rippled through the crowd, then another, and soon a disturbing chorus of hacking sounds began to rise above the general chaos. Amidst the swirling panic, Cale remained strangely still, his small hand still gripping Elara's arm with surprising strength. His emerald ears, instead of pressing flat in fear, were now twitching with an almost unbelievable speed, vibrating so rapidly they seemed to blur. They weren't reacting to the alarm or the shouts. They were processing something else entirely, something beyond Elara's comprehension, as if absorbing a torrent of invisible data from the very air. His large, dark eyes, usually so shy, now held an intense, almost fierce focus, darting around the room, not in confusion, but with a startling clarity. His twilight blue skin, which had shimmered faintly purple moments before, now pulsed with a soft, rhythmic, golden glow, a subtle luminescence that seemed to emanate from beneath his skin. He suddenly stood, pulling Ilara to her feet, his small hands gesturing with an urgency that transcended any language barrier. He pointed emphatically towards the main thoroughfare, then repeatedly towards the hydroponics bay, a section of the agricultural division. As he pointed, a soft, high-pitched hum, almost a song, emanated from him, a sound that seemed to resonate deep within Ilara's bones, a harmonic frequency that felt both ancient and incredibly advanced. It was a sound that seemed to cut through the chaos, a clear, desperate plea. Ilara didn't understand the science, or the hum, or the glowing skin, but she understood the look in Cale's eyes. It was a look of profound determination, mixed with a chilling awareness of the danger. He wasn't running from the problem. He was running towards a solution. A surge of absolute trust, illogical but undeniable, washed over her. "Okay, Cale," she said, her voice steady despite the trembling in her hands. "Hydroponics Bay, let's go." She grabbed his hand, her grip firm, and together they pushed into the surging river of panicked bodies. It was a struggle. People shoved past them, desperate, to reach the evacuation points. A large Grulak, his tusks gleaming, nearly knocked them over, but Ilara braced herself, pulling Cale close, shielding him as best she could. The air grew thicker, heavier, the sweet, acrid smell becoming more pronounced, making her eyes water, and her throat burn. More people were coughing now, some clutching their chests, their movements becoming sluggish. The station's automated voice continued its grim warnings, overlaid with the rising cries of distress. Cale, despite his smaller size, moved with an almost preternatural agility, weaving through gaps Ilara hadn't even seen, his emerald ears twitching, guiding them through the human tide. He seemed to anticipate every shift in the crowd, every sudden lurch, pulling her just in time to avoid collisions. His golden glow pulsed more intensely now, a faint beacon in the dimming corridors as emergency lights flickered on. Ilara felt a strange sense of calm settling over her, a quiet certainty that following Cale was the right thing to do, even as the danger mounted. They passed a medical triage unit, already overflowing with coughing, struggling individuals. The sight was sobering, a stark reminder of the invisible threat spreading through the station. Cale didn't hesitate, his focus unwavering. He pulled her down a less used service corridor, away from the main flow of evacuees, a shortcut he seemed to know instinctively. The air here was even heavier, the strange scent almost overwhelming. Ilara felt a tickle in her lungs, a growing tightness in her chest. She coughed, a dry, rasping sound. Cale glanced back at her, his eyes filled with a silent urgency, and then pulled her faster. The corridor opened into a larger access tunnel, and through a reinforced viewport, Ilara could see the vast, shimmering expanse of the hydroponics bay, a swirling vortex of iridescent mist glowing with an unnatural, sickly green light. It was beautiful, terrifying, and utterly alien. Cale pointed to the access door, his small body vibrating with a silent energy, his emerald ears almost vibrating off his head. The solution, or perhaps the source of the solution, lay within that swirling, dangerous mist, and Cale, the quiet alien boy, was leading them directly into its heart. The suspense hung heavy in the air, a palpable shroud of uncertainty, and the chilling promise of what awaited them beyond that door. The reinforced door to the hydroponics bay hissed open with a reluctant groan, revealing a scene that stole Elara's breath and sent a fresh wave of fear through her. The vast chamber, usually a vibrant tapestry of green and earthy browns, was now consumed by a shimmering, iridescent mist. It swirled and pulsed with an unnatural, sickly green light, clinging to every surface, obscuring the rows of plants and the automated watering systems. The air within was thick, heavy with the cloying sweetness she'd smelled earlier, now mixed with something metallic and sharp, a scent that prickled her nose and burned her throat. It was beautiful in a terrifying way, like a deadly aurora. Elara gasped, a dry cough escaping her lips as the airborne pathogen immediately began to irritate her lungs. Her vision blurred slightly, and a wave of dizziness washed over her. She stumbled, clutching at the doorframe, her body already reacting to the alien threat. Cale, however, seemed utterly unaffected. He stepped into the mist as if it were clear air, his small form moving with a quiet confidence that belied his age, his emerald ears still vibrating at an incredible speed, seemed to be drawing in every particle, every subtle shift in the environment. The golden glow emanating from his skin intensified, casting a soft, warm light around him, pushing back the oppressive green shimmer of the mist by a hair's breadth. He didn't hesitate, pulling Elara gently but firmly into the bay. "Cale," Elara rasped, her voice choked by the irritating air. "We shouldn't be in here. It's dangerous." But Cale didn't respond with words. Instead, he looked at her, his large, dark eyes filled with an unshakable resolve, a silent plea for her trust. He pointed towards the nearest rows of plants, his small hand gesturing with a precise, almost surgical motion. He then held up his own hand, showing her the pulsing golden light that now emanated steadily from his fingertips. It was clear. He had to be here. He was the solution. Elara, fighting the growing nausea and the burning in her lungs, forced herself to focus. She watched as Cale moved with an almost ethereal grace among the plant beds. He didn't touch the plants directly with his full hand. Instead, he hovered his fingertips just above the leaves, his golden glow pulsing outwards. With each subtle movement of his hand, a faint, almost invisible ripple seemed to pass through the mist, and the iridescent shimmer around the touched plants would visibly thin, dissipating like smoke. It was as if he was coaxing the very air to clear, or perhaps, more profoundly, altering the mist itself. It wasn't just touching them. He was subtly shifting their genetic markers, triggering an innate defense mechanism within the plants themselves. He was communicating with them on a biological level, instructing them to combat the alien pathogen, turning the station's own flora into a living, breathing antidote. It was bioengineering on the fly, a miracle unfolding before her eyes. Elara, despite her discomfort, understood the urgency. Cale was fast, but the bay was vast, and the mist was spreading rapidly. She began to help him, not by touching the plants, but by identifying the most affected areas, the places where the mist was thickest, and the plants looked most distressed. "Cale, over here." she'd cough, pointing to a section where the leaves were drooping or where the iridescent mist seemed particularly dense. Cale would immediately glide to that spot, his golden hands working their silent magic. The process was slow, painstaking, but undeniably effective. As they moved deeper into the bay, the air around them in the wake of Cale's touch became noticeably clearer, less irritating. It was a tangible improvement, a small pocket of breathable air in the heart of the contagion. Elara felt a surge of hope, mingled with a profound awe for the quiet boy beside her. He was doing something truly incredible, something no human, no other species she knew of, could even dream of. Just as they reached the central dome of the hydroponics bay, where the mist was swirling in a particularly dense vortex, the heavy access door hissed open again. Station security personnel, their weapons raised but their faces etched with confusion, burst in, followed by a team of medical officers in full biosuits. They stopped dead, their eyes wide with disbelief as they took in the sight, the swirling, dangerous mist, and in its midst a small human girl and an even smaller alien boy, the latter glowing faintly golden, seemingly unaffected, actively clearing the air. One of the security officers, a gruff-looking Grulak, lowered his weapon slowly, his tusks almost touching his chest in a gesture of utter astonishment. "What in the—" he muttered, his voice thick with wonder. The medical team, seeing the clearing air and the relatively healthy appearance of Elara and Cale, rushed forward, not with alarm, but with a dawning realization. They had expected to find victims, not a solution. Cale, still focused, didn't even glance at the newcomers. He was entirely absorbed in his task, his emerald ears twitching, his golden hands working tirelessly on the central, massive mother plant that seemed to be the source of the bay's life. He was pouring every ounce of his energy into it, subtly, shifting its very essence to fight the pathogen. The iridescent mist began to recede faster now, pulled back as if by an invisible vacuum. The sickly green faded, replaced by the natural, healthy greens of the plants. The air became cleaner, breathable, losing its acrid sweetness. The coughing from the security team subsided, replaced by gasps of relief. The earlier laughter and whispers that had followed Cale were now replaced by a profound silence, a quiet respect that settled over the bay. They watched, mesmerized, as the small alien boy, his emerald ears still vibrating with intense concentration, completed his work, saving them all, not with force or technology, but with an innate, gentle power that was as ancient as life itself. The last wisps of the dangerous mist vanished, leaving behind a clean, vibrant hydroponics bay and a silent, stunned group of onlookers who had just witnessed a miracle performed by the very being they had once mocked. The harmony of humanity, the last wisps of the iridescent mist vanished, leaving the hydroponics bay sparkling clean, vibrant and filled with the fresh, earthy scent of healthy plant life. A profound silence hung in the air, broken only by the soft hum of the station's systems and the quiet, relieved breaths of the security and medical personnel. They stood frozen, their eyes fixed on Cale, who now stood amidst the thriving plants, his emerald ears slowly settling, his golden glow fading back to the subtle twilight blue of his skin. He looked small, almost fragile, but the power he had just wielded was undeniable, a force of nature condensed into a child. The gruff Grulak security officer, who had initially burst in with a weapon raised, was the first to move, slowly holstering his rifle. He approached Cale, his heavy boots thudding softly on the metal floor, and then, to Alara's astonishment, he knelt down, his massive hand gently patting Cale's shoulder. "Thank you, young one," he rumbled, his voice surprisingly soft. "You saved us all." The medical team, recovering from their shock, quickly moved to scan Alara and Cale, finding them perfectly healthy, untouched by the pathogen that had threatened to cripple the station. Their instruments, however, registered a faint residual energy signature around Cale, a complex biofrequency that baffled their most advanced sensors. News of Cale's heroic actions spread like wildfire across Prosperity's reach. He was no longer the alien boy with the weird ears who sat alone in the cafeteria. He was Cale, the brilliant young Viridian, the quiet savior of the station. The laughter, the whispers, the pointing, all of it ceased. In their place came a wave of genuine admiration, curiosity, and a profound shift in how the station's diverse inhabitants viewed the Viridian people. Children, instead of mocking, now approached Cale with wide-eyed wonder, eager to ask about his fascinating abilities, about his unique connection to life itself. The group of older adolescents who had once tormented him, including the boisterous human boy and the gruff Grulak, now avoided his gaze, their faces tinged with shame or sometimes a hesitant respect. Alara saw them one day, trying to offer Cale a peace offering of a brightly colored, exotic fruit, their usual bravado replaced by an awkward humility. Cale, still shy, accepted it with a small, polite nod, a testament to his gentle nature. Alara and Cale's friendship deepened, forged in the crucible of shared danger and a profound understanding. She often found him in the hydroponics bay, not because he had to be there, but because he loved it. His emerald ears would twitch gently as he listened to the subtle hum of the plants, a symphony only he could truly appreciate. He would run his fingers over the leaves, and Alara would sometimes see a faint golden shimmer, a quiet reassurance that the plants were thriving, their subtle defenses now enhanced by his touch. He still preferred quiet spaces, the overwhelming sensory input of the station sometimes too much for his sensitive nature. But now, when he smiled, it was a broader, more confident smile, not just for Alara, but for the world around him. He had found his place, not by conforming, but by being uniquely himself. The Viridian consulate on Prosperity's reach, deeply moved by Cale's courage and the human community's newfound acceptance, began to foster deeper cultural exchanges. They shared their unique understanding of biology, their advanced bioengineering techniques, and their deeply empathetic philosophy. Humans, in turn, shared their resilience, their adaptability, and their sometimes clumsy, but always earnest, attempts at connection. Workshops were set up where Viridian bioengineers demonstrated their methods, showing how to heal damaged ecosystems with a touch, how to enhance crop yields with a thought. It was a slow process, bridging centuries of different evolutionary paths, but the foundation was laid. The station, once a mere transit hub, began to transform into a true melting pot, a place where different species didn't just coexist, but truly collaborated, learning from each other's strengths. The incident with the pathogen had been a terrifying wake-up call, but it had also been a catalyst forcing everyone to look beyond superficial differences and recognize the inherent value in every being. However, a subtle undercurrent of unease lingered for Elara. While Kale's actions had been miraculous, they had also revealed a depth of Viridian capability that was almost unsettling. His ability to manipulate biology at a fundamental level, to literally sing plants into health, hinted at powers that could be used for far more than just healing. What else could the Viridian do? What were the limits of their bioengineering? And why had they kept such profound abilities so hidden for so long? These questions, unspoken, sometimes flickered in Elara's mind, a tiny spark of suspense in the new harmony. But then she would look at Kale, tending to a small new sapling in the hydroponics bay, his face serene, his emerald ears perked, listening to the silent song of growth. She would see the genuine joy in his eyes, the simple pleasure he took in nurturing life, and her fears would recede. The human touch, the simple act of kindness from a girl who had seen past his differences, had not only made him smile, but had also helped humanity on Prosperity's reach truly embrace the richness that came with diversity. It had opened a door to a future where species could learn from each other, where unique talents were celebrated, and where the harmony of humanity, and indeed of the galaxy, was built on understanding, empathy, and the quiet, powerful magic of a boy with emerald ears. The station, once just a place, was becoming a home, a testament to the idea that true strength lay not in uniformity, but in the beautiful, unpredictable tapestry of life itself, a tapestry that was still being woven, thread by delicate thread, into an uncertain but hopeful future.